what type of manager are you? What's the culture? How do I fit in here? How do I succeed here? And I usually tell people I'm a macro manager. So I'm the opposite of micro. And what I've kind of discovered over time is most people, especially great people, but most people want to have an impact with what they do. That's typically why you stay at a job and love a job. It's because you have an impact and what you do actually matters. I mean, there's obviously the financial component. We all have to pay our mortgages and things like that. But do you feel good about what you do on a daily basis? Do you want to show up to that job? Do you care about your team? Do you want to help out that team? And when you do, when you start having that impact, that's when you can really start seeing this incredible growth, and it compounds on itself. Like you end up getting other people that want to have an impact, and then you have a whole team full of people.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we're going to talk about scaling trust. What is the level of trust you have across your culture? It's probably not something you've thought about very much. Hopefully you don't have distrust going on that is causing you stress and strife. But what can you learn from today's episode that will help you improve trust across this? I think you'll find some very tactical things. Our special guest today is the co-founder of Closinglock. They really specialize in protecting money and real estate transactions, and they do it in a kind of unique way. So if you're curious about that, go check them out. But they've made the Inc. list a couple of times, and really surprising growth rates for a company this size. We meet with Andy White about scaling trust, and scaling trust is something that you want to think about what level of trust you want to have in your company. And today we talk about some of the things in there, how transparency plays a role in that, and how some of the other things that you can do really create the kind of trust in your business that you want, that drive results. My name is Gene Hammett. I am a executive coach. I help companies that are in growth mode really create the business of their dreams and to do it without burning out. Now, I can say so much more about how we do that, but if you were curious about the work that we do, I'd love to invite you to a free training that we have. We host these every once in a while. You can sign up for the next one. It's live in person. It's usually very intimate. You can get your questions answered. You might even get a little bit of coaching from me. I've been doing this for over a decade and would love to get to know you and your business and really give you some insight around that. I can't tell you exactly when the next one will be, but if you go to training.coreelevation.com, you can sign up for free today, and it will help you become a better leader and help you scale your business, and all without burnout. So go to training.coreelevation.com and sign up now. Now here's the interview with Andy. Hi, Andy. How are you?
I'm doing great, Gene. How are you?
I am fantastic. We're going to have a great conversation about scaling trust. Before we dive into this, I'd love to know more about your company. Tell me about Closinglock.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Closinglock, we protect money for real estate transactions. So as you're familiar with, there's a lot of fraud out there in the world, particularly on the real estate side. People buy, sell their homes, lose their life savings. So we partner with title companies to work with their buyers, sellers, agents, et cetera, to make sure all the money's moving to the right spot for the real estate transaction.
Well, I'd love to ask a follow-up question on this. Like, this is, I've got a lot of real estate properties myself. We get some rental portfolios and things like this. Where's the future of this industry going? Because I thought blockchain would be peaking in and a lot of smart contracts are being used, but I just don't see that. And maybe I'm just not part of the industry. Where are things going over the next 3 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. The industry itself has been around forever, right? We've been buying and selling property since the beginning of mankind, practically. So that's not exactly a new thing. All the technological advances, one of the things I talk about, moving money and real estate, there are kind of three different ways we communicate for a real estate transaction: email, phone, and fax. And then there are two ways we move money for a real estate transaction. It's check and a wire, and that's it. And out of those 5 different things I just described, the newest system I said was actually out in the early 1980s. So the FedWire system is kind of the newest out of that list of things I just talked about. And that was in the early 1980s. So this industry is ready and prepared for some technological improvements in the way we actually send money for these transactions, which is one of the reasons I started Closinglock. When I bought my house in 2016, fast forward a little bit, I heard about a spoofed email. Somebody almost lost all their money in a fraudulent wire transfer scheme. And I thought, man, how did we do that? And I realized, gosh, I had driven to the bank. I had gotten an account number out of an email and wired off our life savings through Wells Fargo. By dumb luck, did it actually go to the right spot? And that was a big light bulb moment for me. My background's engineering. I've got a PhD in computer engineering. I'm not exactly a cyber dummy when it comes to this stuff. And I was shocked at how easily I could have lost my life savings in that transaction, and how my wife would have killed me had that happened. And so she was the one who actually told me about the spoofed email problem. And I also just remember thinking at that time, which, that was 9 years ago now, of why do I have to go send a wire transfer? Why can't I just link my bank account and, somebody figures out how to make this money move, and this transaction is complete at that point. So that's what set me on the journey with Closinglock, and that's what we started doing. So I think the future, I don't want to put a time frame on it. I know you asked next 3 years, but I think the industry has, in the short period I've been in it, these last 9 years, I've seen a pretty big shift from, okay, let's email everything, to, okay, that's probably not sufficient, just emailing and having everybody just come into the office and sign everything and then sending us a wire transfer or a cashier's check. That's starting to shift more toward the digital revolution that a lot of industries have experienced over the last couple of decades. So I think we'll just see more automation, faster closing, easier way to make payments, easier way to close on those transactions.
Fantastic. And I appreciate you guys making it safer as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, let's dive into this. One of the things that it's rare because it's a math problem, but you guys made the Inc. list twice, and you actually climbed up there, not by much, but you went from 139 in 2024. Did I have this right?
Yeah, I think so.
And then to 135 in 2025. Yeah. It's a 3-year growth rate for those listening in. It's based on revenues. It's not profitability, but it's a very good signal that you're doing the right thing over time. So you guys were able to actually climb up the charts, which is not easy to do. You got about 100 employees plus. And you got there because of your trust and the culture that you build around this. Tell us a little bit about what you describe as scaling trust.
Yeah, it's it's a bit like flying the plane while you're building it. And you're exactly right. The law of big numbers here makes it harder to move up the list. I was actually very surprised we moved up the list. I think we somewhat benefited from the fact that the rest of the economy has not done great over some of those periods of time. So some of the growth kind of slowed for others, and we kept accelerating. I'll say that, but I'll also take credit. We sell into the real estate industry, and we're a consumption-based model. So we only get paid when a real estate transaction happens. Not a big surprise. The real estate market has plummeted since 2022 when interest rates started climbing there. So we've been fortunate to still grow really strongly amidst that difficult kind of background or that climate that we've been in. But it's, it's like flying the plane while you're building it. People always talk about that. I wish I had kind of all the right answers there. I talked early on. One of the things I did from the very beginning that I am proud of with Weston. He was the first employee that joined me in 2021. He and I talked a lot about finding someone to do your job. And so a lot of people say focus on the most critical task, write down the most critical things. Those things are important. You don't want to waste time. You want to spend time on the most important things you can. But at the same time, there are dishes in the sink. Somebody's got to put them in the dishwasher. And, if that's me today, that's fine. Let me put those dishes in the sink, and then let me find somebody who can take over that job or that task from me. And same thing with Weston. I was like, great, let's scale the sales team together. What are you doing today? How do we hire somebody that's doing what you're doing? And we will find more valuable work for you to do kind of going forward. And, that takes a special type of personality to say, you know what, and a certain level of trust to be able to say, I'm going to give away my job. Most people hold on to their job. It's like, I built this silo. I own this thing. It's my job security. I won't get fired as long as I'm in control or ownership of this thing. It takes special type of personality, super low ego, obviously, that says, I don't care who gets credit for this. I'm going to find somebody else that can take this over. And then I'll go find something, positive, valuable that I can do for the company instead of what I'm doing here. And that is actually, you talk about scaling trust. That's the only way it scales. You find somebody else to do your job, then you go find something else, and then you find somebody to do that job, and then you find something else, and rinse and repeat that. And, over time it starts working.
You probably wouldn't be surprised if I said a lot of leaders, CEOs, have um, a big problem with hiring people that aren't willing to develop the younger group of people, the junior staff, if you will, underneath them. They want to hold on to it because they're good at it, or because they want to make sure it's done the right way, which is respectable. But also, if they're not growing those people, it doesn't really create the kind of flywheel that we want as a company. And so how were you able to like convince your employees to do this, like let go of what they're currently doing to develop others so that they can move into a bigger area?
Yeah, it's I wish there was a silver bullet that was obvious as to how that actually works. I mean, obviously we're talking about trust, and you have to have that trust relationship. One of the things Weston trusted me with early on, which I really appreciated, was if he went and found something else to do, if he hired his replacement and found something else, that I wasn't going to say, great, we don't need Weston anymore. In fact, to me, that made him even more valuable. Like, oh my gosh, this guy can actually scale our business. Like, he can build a scalable organization. And so I just love people with that mentality. That, we talk a lot about kind of over indexing on personality, like finding people with the grittiness, the positive attitude. And in fact, I've focused on that, especially early on, more so than experience. Like, you know what? You haven't been in this industry, no big deal. You haven't done X, you haven't done Y, and I'm going to need you to do X and Y. But no big deal. I like your grit. I like your positive attitude. I like that you're willing to take a chance. You like some risk. You're okay with change. Change scares a lot of people. You've got a good energy to you. Hiring for those people and bringing those leaders in, it creates kind of a flywheel effect, because you all feed off of each other. And, we work in person 5 days a week, which is a bit unusual. I realize that's not the standard in today's environment. We didn't intend to start out that way. We just kind of did, and it worked well. And it's like, well, we're growing well, things are going well. Like, why fix it if it ain't broke type attitude? And we just kept doing it from there. But anyways, I've rambled, so I'll pause there and make sure I'm still on track for the questions you're interested in asking.
No, I think you're on the right track with this. You were talking about how Weston was more valuable to the company because he was willing to let go of whatever domain of expertise he had and transfer that to someone else so that he could work on the next thing. Like, I'm sure you're seeing this at scale. It's not just Westing doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what creates the scalable organization. So you're talking earlier about some CEOs have a hard time letting go. And that's, I think that's everybody, not just CEOs. Like, it's, if you're an expert at something, it's hard to say, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. But at the same time, you've got to look at the bigger picture. Can you really run a 100-person company, 1,000-person company, a 1,000,000-person company if you're the one who's doing all of something? The answer is obviously no. And as you scale, that becomes more and more obvious. When there are 5 of you, sure, you can own your thing and you can do all of it and you can be the hero. And, some people, that's what that matters to them. If they want to be the hero, they want to be get all the credit for it or whatever, it makes them tick. That's fine. And just kind of know what your lane is, though. If that's you, just realize, like, you're probably not going to be a 100-person company one day, or not super successful, because that's going to be hard to do. You've got to have those scalable systems, and trust is a two-way street, right? We're talking about, I was hoping Weston would scale out of his position and scale into something else, and then we'd find something else for him to do. And he kept doing that, which is great. But he had to trust me that I wasn't going to then cut him once he, found his backfill. And I had to trust him that he wasn't going to be playing hero ball over there, and he wasn't going to be micromanaging everything. In fact, one of the words I use a lot when we talk about kind of scaling or leadership or something like that is being a macro manager. So a lot of people, particularly when I hire a new senior leader, what type of manager are you? What's the culture? How do I fit in here? How do I succeed here? And I usually tell people I'm a macro manager. So I'm the opposite of micro. And what I've kind of discovered over time is most people, especially great people, but most people want to have an impact with what they do. That's typically why you stay at a job and love a job. It's because you have an impact and what you do actually matters. I mean, there's obviously the financial component. We all have to pay our mortgages and things like that. But do you feel good about what you do on a daily basis? Do you want to show up to that job? Do you care about your team? Do you want to help out that team? And when you do, when you start having that impact, that's when you can really start seeing this incredible growth, and it compounds on itself. Like you end up getting other people that want to have an impact, and then you have a whole team full of people. And then the problem is actually, I've got 100 people that all want to have an outsized impact. How do I make sure everybody is being able to contribute in the ways that they want? But that macro management style is basically just saying, hey, here's what we expect. Here's what we need. Go do it. If you have problems, let me know. Like we'll all be happy to jump in and help out, but I'm going to get out of your way and let you go figure this out. And, tell me what you need to succeed. And I usually tell a lot of the senior leaders, and, as you grow, and you've seen this as well, you end up hiring and having functions that you're not the functional expert for, right? Like I was an engineer, so I coded the platform to begin with, and I knew how to do that. And, I was our principal engineer here. But over time, we hired other engineers, and now it's to a point where they've added so much stuff, and it's so much better and more scalable than what I ever built. And these guys are incredible. Like, and they've built a scalable system. I got us started, and it's like that across the board. I mean, we've got VP of marketing. She's fantastic. She knows a lot about marketing. I know nothing about marketing, so I can't show up and say, here's what we should be doing. All I can say is like, do you need money? Do you need people? Do you need new products? Like, tell me what you need, and then we'll figure out how to go get it for you.
Well, I love where we're going with this interview, Andy, and I appreciate it. I want to go backwards a little bit because you mentioned something, but sometimes we have to put a spotlight on some things that are very powerful and different than others. You had talked about basically the personal qualities of a good hire, and you said, I'm not as concerned about experience in the industry. I think that's one of the check boxes a lot of it goes, you must have 3 to 5 years experience, and we all get it. But you also have skill fit and things like that. But you seem like you're over indexing on the culture fit of what you're doing, the grit, this ability to develop others and let go of things. Did you learn that somewhere, or did you just decide that you wanted to have this in your company?
Yeah, I mostly decided I wanted to have it in our company. The luxury I have too is there aren't a lot of tech companies that sell to title and escrow companies that exist out there. So finding somebody with those experienced skill sets is probably unlikely to begin with. So I have that luxury. So it's easy to say, okay, I don't need to over-index for experience. But at the same time, I mean, even just like different journeys, and even if it's not the same industry, just that same skill set, I do index more so because I'm a big believer in learning. I mean, we talked about your book earlier. Love to learn from that. I'm excited to go read it and learn something from it, because we all need to have that kind of growth mindset, that learning mentality. And if you do, and you find other great leaders that have that same learning mentality, they want to learn everything they can, they want to work hard, they want to have an impact, you can almost put them on anything and they will be successful at it. Yeah, there might be some ramping time and it might be, a little bumpy at first or something like that. But in general, like, you find great people that fit all those characteristics we just talked about, and they're excited and willing and want to learn and grow. Like, it's not hard for them to succeed kind of doing whatever's needed.
I want to ask you a question, and you may not want to answer this, which would be perfectly fine. But you may have some A players listening into this in the future going, I want to see who Andy is and who this company is, and I'm going to listen to the podcast. So again, if you don't want to answer it, I get it. But how do you assess whether someone has that learning mentality?
Good question. One of the things Weston taught me early on when he started working with me was just ask somebody, what's something you've taught yourself recently? What's something you've learned recently? And not work related, like just what's something in life you have done that is interesting? You ask me, what's something you learned that's interesting and unusual? I learned to juggle when I was little. Why? I don't know. Just for fun. Learned how to juggle. And that was something I picked up and still know how to do this day. But if you can usually tell pretty quickly how intellectually curious somebody is just by talking to them. I mean, you can also tell how many questions do they ask in the interview. You do an interview and you ask them a bunch of questions and you get to the end of it and you say, what do you want to know about Closinglock? What do you want to know about the team? And they're like, oh, I read your website. I feel pretty good about everything. That's pretty tough. I mean, there are cases where that can be okay, but in general, I tell everybody, employment's a two-way street. I got to make sure I like you, but you got to make sure you like me, and you got to like the company, and you got to understand what you're walking into, because the worst thing we can do is be like, great, here's the job, and it's something completely different than what you expect. And then 6 months later, you're like, hey, you lied to me about what I'd be doing here. I'm out. I'm going to somewhere else. And then you're starting back over looking for more people to fill those positions. So I'm pretty big on like, hey, two-way street here, ask any questions. And, some of the best interviews I've had, and I guess I am sharing the secrets here. So if you're listening, don't use my tactics against me here in the future interview. But one of the things I've found is when people ask questions about like the business model, the industry, where's the industry going the next 3 years? Why are you excited about this? How were sales last quarter? What does the board look like? But, people start asking like pretty specific business questions. That generally means they're curious beyond just whatever their functional area is. So, if you're the VP of engineering coming in for an interview, and you're asking me about like, hey, how was net dollar retention and why do you care about that? And what can you do to influence that? What could I do to influence that? Those are like pretty good signals that that person's going to be willing to learn and adapt and wants to know how things are going.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us. We're talking about scaling trust. What have we left out of scaling trust that would help other CEOs kind of understand what you have done to make your team perform at the level they performed at?
Sorry, I cut out there just for a second. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
What have you done to, what have we left out of this conversation around scaling trust that would help other CEOs?
Good question. I think we do some things a little bit differently. I mentioned kind of working in person. I'm a big believer in that. Actually, I think it's a lot easier to build trust in person than it is remotely or via Zoom or via phone call, et cetera. In fact, I learned that early days trying to sell our product. We're trying to protect money movement and real estate transactions. You can imagine it was just my wife and I, we started it. We're going to title companies saying, hey, sign up for our platform. We're going to protect the hundreds of thousands of dollars you're moving on every real estate transaction. Please do it through our software instead of the way you normally do it. And PS, we've never done this before. PS, we're brand new to this industry and we kind of have no background in business doing this. Is it cool if we protect that transaction for you? That's a pretty tough trust hurdle to get over. And so what we did from the very beginning was we showed up at the conferences. We showed up in person with lunches like, hey, let me bribe you with a lunch to just listen to me for 30 minutes, talk about why our software is going to be beneficial for your title company. People are nice. They'll be like, yeah, sure. If you want to waste your time bringing me lunch, I'll do it. And eventually we got some people on board and started using the platform and were able to scale it from there. So I think, in person, as much as you may love it or hate it, I do think that is valuable for creating trust. Even you just think about, I have interactions on a daily basis with people in the break room when I go to get water or whatever that I would never meet otherwise. Like 100 people, it's hard to meet everybody in the business on a daily basis. And, you get to have those interactions that you wouldn't normally have. So then when we do have to have a tough conversation in the future or like something bad happens in the business, businesses are not always up and to the right as much as the Inc. 5000 shows, us climbing up and to the right. There are things that happen internally that are challenging along the way. When you work in person, it's really easy to get each other together and say, great, let's just talk about this. What questions do you have? I guess to further that point, talking about Q&A or what questions you might have, we also have a bit of extreme transparency. I usually say what I think. I don't try to hide what I'm thinking about anything. That might be a little bit unusual relative to some other leaders out there. But I found, it really helps with aligning people because I'm not trying to worry about what I've told one group, what I haven't told some other group. I just kind of share whatever I'm thinking broadly with everybody. And that makes it really easy on my side to make sure, I'm being consistent. I'm talking about things from a consistent standpoint with everybody. And it also ends up being a whole lot more efficient and easier than, if I don't want to say sugarcoating because that gives the impression that I, deliver things in a rude manner or something like that. But I'll give a quick example real fast. We were in a recent roadmap meeting and one of the items on there, and I just kind of blurted out, oh, I really dislike doing X. And the team laughed and said, well, tell us how you really feel, like, where's this coming from? And then we were able to have the conversation. Okay, here's what I think about it. Here's why I think that about it. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but we're able to have that immediate feedback and conversation about it. And the employees trust me. Like, if we go build X, no one's going to get fired over that. If they believe that X is the right thing to build, then by all means, let's go build it. And I can be supportive of that. But by me being able to just easily say and be transparent of, here's what I think about it, we're able to cut out, like, the pre-meetings, before the meetings, the post-meetings, after the meetings, talking to the manager, getting them to talk to the people about what's going on. There's no like wasted time. There's no kind of blame game or anything like that. It's just like, well, here's what I think about it. Okay, here's what you think about it. And of course, we do it in a respectful manner so that we, make sure we've got a friendly and respectful culture here.
I want to share this with you and the audience as well, because you're not, you haven't been there for all 800 of our founder CEOs through the podcast.
Right.
We look at a lot of the real driving factors of this, and transparency shows up. One of the most common words. We actually have analyzed this across a lot of the interviews we've had, and the number of CEOs and founders that will come back and say, we wouldn't be the company we are if we didn't have the level of transparency we do. And so I've talked about it on stages. So I'm just reinforcing the fact that it's probably natural to you, but it's not natural to others. And they really, try to keep people in boxes and keep the data. Maybe it's profitability. They're some things they don't want to share. I get it, but the best performing organizations will have a level of transparency that's probably remarkable versus one that's like, kind of like we give you out the information we think you need.
Yeah. You know what? I'd like to say I was some super genius and figured that out on my own. I just kind of stumbled into it early on when we started hiring people, and we were going through fundraising. I was trying to raise a series seed round. And we did a friends and family round. Then we did the seed round. We were having all hands, but there were only like, 8 of us and then 15 of us and that kind of stuff. And I realized at these all hands, I started showing the P&L. Because I actually had a question early on at an all hands of like, hey, great, we just raised some more money. Can we get raises? And I thought, oh, this is interesting. They have a different view of the business than I have of the business, because the reality at the time was we were burning $100,000 a month or something like that, like not a whole lot of money to go around for raises. And I started showing the P&L at the all hands. I still do that at the monthly all hands that we have. And I say, here's how much money we brought in. Here's how much money we spent. Here's the delta there. Here's how much money we have in the bank account. And what I found is, that actually develops trust. Like people start, okay, like I understand where the business is. I understand what's going on. I understand we have runway, so I don't need to be worried about my job. You can kind of answer a lot of those questions that don't even kind of come up from the beginning. People would be too scared to ask, like, what's our runway? Nobody's going to raise their hand and ask that in an all hands, or like, are we all going to go out of business, or how much money are we making? How much money are we losing? But I found that if you just share that information, there's very little harm in sharing it. My original thought was, okay, like, certain people need to know certain things. And there are private things. Like, I don't tell everybody's salary. If you want to go tell your salary to somebody else, feel free, but I'm not going to share that information on your behalf. But anything business related or company related, I'm, happy to share what's going on there. And then that gets everybody bought into, we are on the same team. We all understand where we are. Like, we know where we stand as a business. We know where we're going, and we're all in this boat together. Let's figure it out. Because like I said, it's not always easy the whole time. So it's good if everybody kind of has the same level of understanding about what's going on that you do.
Well, we're wrapping up here, Andy. I will leave this with 2 things that I feel like are universal truths. If you tell people the bad news, that they will typically rally for you, not against you. Like, they won't, exit the company. They will try to think of new ideas to save money or new ideas to make something work. And the second piece behind this is, if you don't tell them, usually they make up the worst story. They get scared. It's a fear thing that people make up. So all that being said, those listening in, really appreciate Andy, you being here to talk about scaling trust and the impact that it's made at Closinglock.
Thanks so much, Gene. It was a pleasure.
Another fantastic episode here on the podcast. Scaling trust is something you definitely want to think about as your culture begins to grow. Doesn't matter. You can't do it too early, I don't think. But if you really are having some people issues in your business, you might want to look at the level of trust that's going on and what you're doing to either make that better, or what are some of the things that are actually getting in the way of how you show up as a leader. And those blind spots are really important to be able to understand. I mentioned this earlier. If you want to get the latest free training we have so that you can be a better leader and grow your business, go to training.coreelevation.com and schedule for the next one. It's absolutely free. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.